Welcome to our weekly Forex forecast. And today we are preparing for the week of September 30th to October the 4th, 2019. Just a quick disclaimer here before we get started. This is for educational purposes only. Trading is a risky business, so please be careful with your money. Okay, so as usual, we'll start off by taking a look at our calendar first of all. So we are going into this week. All right, so before we dive into the calendar here, just a few things to keep in mind. So first, from a geopolitical perspective, we still have that from the U.S. President Trump's the impeachment inquiry going in. So we have to keep an eye out for any comments or any developments in regards to that, because market seems to have, at first market reacted negatively to that, but now the market has shrugged off much of that. But should something be uncovered that is negative, we will see a direct impact on the market. So keep an eye out for any developments in that respect. Secondly, we are getting close to our Brexit deadline. We are in October already, coming up this week. And as the deadline gets closer, there will be more developments in that regard as well. So expect to see volatility in British pound for October. So that's the second thing. Third thing is tomorrow, Monday here, it's the month end as well as quarter end. So, excuse me. So during this time, we are likely to see some repositioning. So the larger traders or institutional banks and so forth, they will be repositioning, closing out some trades, booking profits and so forth, which can create the opposite flows of what we normally see. So those are the three things to keep in mind just from trading perspective outside of news and so forth. So now let's take a look at what's coming up in terms of the data here. So to start the week off here, we have data from New Zealand here, the business confidence numbers, they were negative here. So if we see a decline in the business confidence, we are likely to see a drop in New Zealand dollar here. And then we have manufacturing and non-manufacturing PMI numbers, as well as the manufacturing PMI numbers here. So overall, these numbers essentially will have an impact on Australian dollar and New Zealand dollar. Positive numbers are likely to boost both Australian and New Zealand dollar, and up or vice versa for that. So Chinese number tend to have an impact on Australian dollar and New Zealand dollar. So that's what we have coming up on Sunday today. And then on Monday here, we have current account. These are important numbers here as well. If we see it worse than what's forecasted here, we're likely to see a drop in British pound. But other than that, we have in the US session here, Chicago PMI numbers, again, an important data point. And then we have another business confidence numbers for New Zealand here as well. And Japanese yen, even though employment numbers here are not in red here, they are still important. Japanese yen is we see this as a risk aversion asset or safe haven asset. So this tends to get moved around quite a bit by other things, but the data will have an impact on it as well. So if the data is weak, we're likely to see a drop in Japanese yen, which means the yen crosses would go up. Okay, so October here. Also, another thing to keep in mind, US and China are supposed to resume their trade talks in October as well. So that's another thing to keep in mind just as we go through here. Okay, very important here. We have the RBA statement as well as cash rate. So Australia, Reserve Bank of Australia is expected to cut the interest rate here. So we're expecting a drop. If they don't cut the interest rate, we're likely to see Australian dollar go up. If they do cut the interest rate, we're likely to see it go down. But leading up to Monday night here, we could see Australian dollar drop. We've been seeing that. We saw that on Friday as well. And we could see more of an Australian dollar drop in expectation leading up to it. but the cash rate here will have an impact once it comes out. And then on Tuesday here, we have a bunch of PMI numbers out of the Eurozone. So important to watch the Euro as these numbers come out. And then we have RBA Governor Lau's speech here. So normally we see for once we get the rate statement, then we see this the speech from the central banker. So this speech tends to move the market as well, especially if it either is too dovish, too bullish, or they talk about future interest rate cuts, any of that. That could have a negative impact on Australian dollar as well if it is dovish, and vice versa. Canadian GDP numbers here, again, important numbers to pay attention to, will have a direct impact on Canadian dollar. We have a bunch of FOMC members speaking. We've been hearing a lot of FOMC members. So far, I haven't seen a ton of impact on the markets, but we do need to keep an eye on central bankers, especially these days with everybody cutting their interest rates and monetary policy becoming so important once again. So just keep an eye on these. And then we have more manufacturing PMI numbers here from US this time. Like I said, this is leading indicator. So negative or numbers that are below forecast are likely to have a negative impact on the US dollar. And then since this is the first week of the month, we have ADP non-farm employment numbers here. These are considered basically precursors to our non-farm payroll information. So therefore, they can move the market. So we are already expecting a decline. But if the number drop more here further below this expected number, then US dollar is likely to drop based on that information. Crude oil inventories here, again, if there's a drawdown, that would be good for oil. If there is a buildup, that will be negative for the oil and as well as the Canadian dollar. Going into Thursday here, we have non-manufacturing PMI numbers. Like I said, any PMI numbers are important. Retail sales numbers for Australia. And big thing here on Friday will be the US non-farm numbers. Non-farm numbers are always market movers. We tend to see a lot of volatility around the US dollar when these numbers come out. So keep an eye on them. Again, there are two numbers we're watching. Average hourly earnings, if it's below expectations, we usually see a drop as a result of that in the US dollar. And if the employment numbers are lower than expected, then that can also have a negative impact on the US dollar. And then, of course, trade balance numbers out of Canada, which will have a direct impact on the Canadian dollar here, especially with trade becoming so important right now. Any drop in the trade balance numbers will have a negative impact on Canadian dollar here. And then we have a whole bunch of FOMC members speaking, including Powell. So last time we saw that President Trump was very negative in regards to the Fed and especially targeting Powell. So it will be interesting to keep an eye on this speech to see if he talks about what the future holds. So market is expecting another interest rate cut from Fed as well. So if he drops any hints in regards to the interest rate cut, that will have a negative impact on the US dollar right away. So very important speech to keep in mind here. So overall, we do have a few important data points coming out. So keep that in mind, and let's move on to our charts now. All right, so as usual, we'll start off with euro here. So in regards to the euro, we see that price has dropped. However, so last week we were expecting a drop. We got that drop, but again, it hasn't quite gone through the support yet. It tried to, and then it pulled back. So at this point, bias is still to the downside, but I would be careful with the support level. If price does not hold below 1.0920 level, then we could see a reversal back into this range again. So if you take a look at it, price has been trading in this range since August here. So last 4 weeks, 5 weeks, we have spent in this range. So we could see a retest and then move back up. So that's the caution. We need to be careful about that. If it doesn't hold below the 1.0920, it could reverse. But my bias is to the downside. But that is, like I said, once it breaks that 920 mark, looking for price to drop further back into this support and resistance area over here, which is 1.09. So which is 1.0840 level. So let's say 20 level if we go into the pin here. So bias is to the downside, target is 1.0820, but just with caution there. Pound dollar here, this one we saw a nice drop. So bias is to the downside. For pullback, I would look at 1.2360 level or 80 level here, and then looking for a continuation of this downtrend that we saw from previous week. Now, like I said, we are in October now, getting close to the deadline. So if we hear comments about EU willing to extend the deadline, anything like that, that will have a positive impact on British pound, and we're likely to see a reversal in British pound. But based on the technicals alone here, bias is to the downside, and that's the move I would expect. So 1.2380 is the pullback level, and then looking for price to drop further. First target is 1.2200, then 1.2080. So bearish bias here for our pound. Aussie dollar here, the week has been neutral. So we haven't really seen much of a move here. Now, as we can see here, price did a back test, and therefore I will look for a continuation to the downside here. However, if the RBA actually does not cut rates, that could push Australian dollar up. But overall, I will look for a continuation. Bias is neutral for this week though, but this is the type of move I would look for here. So pullback potentially into 0.6800 and then a continuation lower. Target is 0.6680. New Zealand dollar here, this one as well, we saw price pull back. Previous week here, we had a nice bearish candle here. Price pulled back, did a retest. And now I'm looking for a continuation to the downside here. But just be careful because we could see this one go sideways as well, because as we can see, we are pretty much here into yearly lows here. Price hasn't been at this level since 2015. So we do expect support coming in and buyers coming in there. So it's an important support resistance level. Therefore, we could see price struggling, but overall bias is to the downside. And with this one, what I would look for here would be as long as price is below the high, excuse me, below the high of this last week's candle, 0.6350, I'm looking for price to drop towards 0.6200. So bias is bearish here for New Zealand dollar. Dollar CAD here, this one has just been going sideways. Price is still trading in that range, hasn't really been able to move much here. So my bias is neutral. I'm just looking for price to basically trade in the range. But if it breaks the high of this previous week's candle here, this one could go higher, but right now I would look for price to drop towards the bottom of the range here. So something like this, looking for a further move to the downside, but within that range. So bias is neutral, looking for it to move lower into 1.3150. Euro pound here, Euro pound, we have talked about this. This one was into support level. So now it is turning. So bias is to the upside here. So bullish bias, we have a nice bullish candle close here. So looking for it to move further. In terms of our pullback level, I would look for a potential pullback into 0.8870 or 50. and then looking for a further move to the upside here, and target is 0.9020. So bullish bias for euro pound. Euro Swiss franc here, last week we had a pin bar. I love trading pin bars. I think I've mentioned that a few times. So this one is played out as expected. We had a nice drop here. So now bias is to the downside. However, notice that we are into support here. This is where price struggled and turned around last time. Even though we had a bearish candle close here, price moved back up. So price has been trading in this range for some time. As we can see, there was a similar range on the way up as well. So this is where we are currently. So now I'm looking for price to drop further here. First target is 1.0780, and then the second target is 1.0720. Now the caution would be if the price does not drop below our support level here, that could be problematic, and we could see price go back into the range. So this is bearish, but with caution. Pound Swiss franc, we also had a pin bar here, so nice follow through with that pin bar. So bias is still to the downside. Next target is 1.2100, and then we are into 1.1960 level. So bias is bearish. And in terms of a pullback level here, I would look at potentially into 1.2280 and then a drop here. So bias is bearish for pound Swiss franc. Dollar Swiss franc here, completely neutral candle close. Price went to the high and the low of the range it has been trading in. So neutral bias at this point. I will look to see, does it want to break the high or the low? So for now, bias is neutral for dollar Swiss franc. Now, if it does go through the low here, next target would be 0.9800. But for now, bias is neutral. Pound yen, this one as well, we were looking for a drop. So we got that drop. Prices into support. So if we follow this support level all the way through, we see this is where it is at. So we have support here as well as here. So price struggled both times. So just be cautious. We could see a pullback into 133.50 level and then follow through here. Next target is 130.70 level and then 129.50. So bias is bearish for pound yen as well. Euro yen here, this one is, we were expecting a drop last week, so we got that. Now, though, it is into support. So this is the support level again, coming or going all the way from 2017 here. Okay, my apologies. Okay, so a price bounced off of the support level. So just be cautious with this one, because what could happen is we could see a retest of the bottom here, and then price could just go sideways. So be careful with that one. But bias is still bearish, but as long as price is able to close or stay below 117.50. So just be cautious with this one. In terms of the pullback, we could get a pullback all the way into 118 or 119 and then a drop. So we could get a bit of a move up. And as long as it stays below 119, I would look for a drop, but bearish, but with caution. This one here hasn't really done much. Price has just gone sideways. It's been, it dropped and then pulled back here. So for now, my bias here is neutral, and I would just keep an eye on how price reacts at the top of the candle here. So price, as we can see, tested this previous support resistance level. As long as it stays below, it could drop, but if US dollar gets stronger here, we could see it go through as well. So my bias here is neutral, and this is kind of what I'm looking for. If the price does not go through 108.20, I will look for a drop, but if it goes through, there's an opportunity for it to go towards 109, even 109.20. So bias for now is neutral, but it can go in either direction. Aussie yen here. This one we see price had dropped nicely the previous week, and this week it hasn't really done anything. It's just sitting sideways here. Now, if RBA cuts rates, I would expect this one to come down. But for now, it's neutral. It can go in either direction. So here we have, it's just right in the middle. So we have a high and we have a low, and this is a right in the middle. So no real direction. What I would look for Aussie yen would be a retest of the high from last week at 73.30. If it stays below, then I would look for a drop here. Again, RBA rate statement will be very important for Australian dollar here, especially if there's an interest rate cut. We are likely to see a drop following that. So we could see this one drop. But for now, bias is neutral because it could go in either direction. So if it breaks through the high here, then I would look for it to go towards 74.50. But if it breaks through the low, then I'm looking for it to go towards 71. So I'm going to leave both of those on the charts, or both lines on the chart, and we'll see which way it wants to break, because there is an opportunity for it to go or to take the trade higher or lower. So neutral bias for Aussie yen. New Zealand yen, this one as well here, we see prices just gone sideways here, and it hasn't really done a whole lot. So if RBA cuts rate, we are likely to see a response or a similar response in New Zealand dollar as well, maybe not as exaggerated, but a similar response, because then there would be pressure on Reserve Bank of New Zealand to cut rates as well, because they are similarly impacted by the trade with China. So for now, bias here is also neutral. This could just be a pullback for a further move to the downside, and that's basically what I'm looking for. However, if it breaks through the high of the range, so my first scenario that I'm looking for is price to go into this resistance and then drop from there to reject it. But if it breaks through, then it's very likely it goes into the high here at 79.50. So for now, a bias is neutral for New Zealand yen as well. Okay, next one here, CAD yen. CAD yen also neutral. It's been trading in this range and still a range bound here. So bias is neutral. We could see price go towards the high of 82, and then I would look for a rejection from there like it did previously, just because this is an important support resistance level here. So for now, bias is neutral, and I'm actually looking for price to just go sideways. So that's CAD yen. All right. Now moving on to commodities here. So we'll start off with silver. Silver had a big drop here on Friday. So bias is to the downside here, but notice we are into support. So right now price tried to break through and then it went higher. So it just rebounded from there. So right now I'm looking for price to retest this level here, retest the support. If it stays below, then I'm looking for a further drop here. So bias is bearish here. Now let's take a look at the weekly here. So this is the weekly chart. As we can see, it's into important support resistance level. Now, if it goes through, we could see a drop towards 16.80 here. So bias is bearish. But if it gets stuck where it is currently into the support here, so this one, again, bias is bearish, but with caution. If it does a test and doesn't go through, we could see it come back. But for now, bearish bias, 16.80 is the next target. Gold here, gold has dropped as well from a weekly perspective. But as we can see here, it's still trading in that range here. Price hasn't been able to break that support yet. It tried here, reversed, tried again, and it pulled back from here. So bias, I would say, is bearish still, but with caution on this one as well, because this is the support that we are looking at, and the next target here will be 1452, and then beyond that we are looking at 1430 level here, or 35 level. So bias is bearish, but like I said, for several weeks this has been range bound sideways. So if it doesn't break the support, this one could go back sideways as well. Very, very important to pay attention to the support at 1480, 85-ish level here. If it doesn't hold below, then it's going up. But for now, bias is bearish. So for that, we need to see a break, a hold below the support, and then a move lower. So this is what I'm looking for. But if it doesn't break the support, it is likely to go higher. Oil here, oil has been a bearish as well here. And as we can see, price has moved lower, but we are into support. So just be mindful here. Important support, but bias is bearish. Now, in terms of the pullback, we could get a pullback higher here. So watch out for that. The potential pullback level is 57.50, and then a drop from there. So bearish bias, but this could happen. So target here is 52.80. So bearish bias for oil. Copper here, copper is going sideways here. So not a very strong candle for the week. So bias is neutral. This one could go in either direction. We just need to see which way the candle, which way it breaks. So if it goes through the high, I would look for a move higher. If it goes through the support here, through the bottom, the support level from previous week, I would look for it to continue lower. For now, copper is completely neutral. Bitcoin had a big drop here. I do not have the weekend numbers, but based on the weekly chart here, we had talked about how it was doing a pennant, and once the pennant breaks, let me just draw the pennant out. Well, we see that once the pennant breaks, it tends to have a strong reaction. So this was our pennant where it was coiling, and now we see a break to the bottom here. So bias is bearish with this one. Watch out for a pullback though. It's dropped for a number of days, so this one could pull back even into 88.80 level, and then looking for a drop towards 73.80 and potentially into 71.80. So bias is bearish, and the move that we could look for here would be something like this, and then a drop. So bearish bias for Bitcoin. All right, so moving on to our equities here. Equities did a double top here for at the highs here. This week we have a bearish candle close, but as we can see, price is into support here. So this is an important support and resistance level. If the price does not break this level, this one could go higher. So very strong caution here. Again, if it does not break the support, it could go sideways here and go test the high once again. So the support level here at 29.40 is critical. But if we see that support level breaks, so if it doesn't break, target is 30.20. If it breaks, though, first target is 28.90, and then we could even see it come back towards 2800. So for now, bias is bearish, but the strong caution here around 29.40. So bearish bias for S&P 500. NASDAQ here, this one looks bearish here. We have seen a drop, and now again, we are into support, so just need to be careful of that. The bias is bearish here, potential pullback level at 77.70, and then looking for a drop. So something like this, 73.50 is the target. So bearish bias here for NASDAQ. DAX here, DAX hasn't really done a whole lot. It's just been sideways still. As we can see, price hasn't moved much. So my bias is My bias is neutral. I don't like this candle very much. It's not a strong candle. We have a large pin in the bottom that shows rejection. So this one could move back towards 12,500. So keep an eye on that, but neutral bias here. So if it goes into the high, we could see a rejection because this is an important support resistance, and we could see price move back down from there. For now, though, bias is neutral. FTSE here. FTSE was actually strong. It went to test the low and then has pushed off of that. It is into resistance right now, but if it goes through, we're looking for it to go to the next one at 75.60 level. So bias is bullish for FTSE. Nikkei here dropped quite a bit on Friday here, giving it a bearish bias now. Again, this one is also into the support level, so we just have to be cautious, but bias is bearish. 21,200 is the next target here, so bearish bias here for Nikkei as well. Okay, so that brings us to the close. If you would like to get the spreadsheet, you can go to tradingwithvenus.com/forecast, and you can download the spreadsheet with all the targets that we talked about today. So that's it for now. Have a wonderful trading week, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.